Morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim. We started Klot Tfilah, Siman Petet, Tavkuf Yuted Amud Bet, of the regular prints of the Mishnah Berura, Seif Gimel. Maran writes, Asur lo להתעסק בצרכיו או ללך לדרך עד שיתפלל תפילת שמונה עשרה. A person cannot engage in their own private personal needs before they daven. It's a simple, straightforward Gemara. As we mentioned before, the drasha of the Gemara of Oti shlachta acharei gavecha, that achar shenitga'a ze. The Gemara says, Hashem complains, says after this guy takes care of his own arrogance, then he comes to pay his dues to me. So that will be, putting ourselves before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, putting the personal needs, prioritizing them over tefillah, is something that is, in its nature, is wrong, as the Gemara says in Daf Yudalid, Amud Aleph in Masachet Brachot, and the Rama adds, "V'yesh mekilim la'achar she'amru miktzat brachot kodem she'amru baruch she'amar." The Rama adds that there are those lenient opinions that after you have already said some of the brachot, some of the praises of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, will be a little bit more lenient. Again, Maran does not bring that here. V'lo le'echol, v'lo lishtot. Also, you cannot eat, you cannot drink. Which we have to now categorize this drinking, as we started speaking about it in the previous shiur. Aval mayim mutar, water you can drink. Kodem tefillah, ben bechol, ben b'shabbat yom tov. Doesn't make a difference whether it's in a regular weekday or on Shabbat and Yom Tov. You could drink water before shacharit. So now you understand why we mentioned before that coffee even, or tea, used to be a big deal. Maran Chida, right, says, okay, coffee you could have, but no, chas v'shalom, sugar and milk you cannot have in your coffee, because back then, there was a time that coffee itself was considered a delicacy, or tea, like 11 o'clock tea for British would be something of, it's something fancy that you will sit and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. But again, as the generations developed and it became something that you just wake yourself up to or with, and it's nothing really considered fancy or a delicacy, it became more and more lenient, to the point that many poskim nowadays allow a regular coffee with sugar, with milk, for a person if they want to just revive themselves and wake up to come learn. That would be allowed as well. So, but Maran writes, it's only water that's mutar to drink before tefillah, ben bechol ben b'shabbat, v'chen ochalim u'mashkim dirfuah. Or if you're eating or drinking for refuah, you are not trying to indulge and engage in pleasure, but rather you are eating something for refuah. Imagine somebody that has to take a certain pill or medication, and it's time bound. You have to eat it at a certain point, and you can't eat it on an empty stomach. So you want to have a little something in order not to ruin your lining of your stomach and so on. So that is considered a refuah. You're not eating because you're seeking pleasure. Or someone that is so weak, so sick that they cannot go to tefillah, before they have a little bit to strengthen themselves to be able to daven properly. So that would be refuah. Now, of course, this could be taken far, and that's where it becomes important to keep in mind that this does not mean that everyone naturally is built in weak, and therefore you could sit and eat a whole meal before Tfilat Shacharit of Shabbat. That certainly is not included in this. A person that's sick, a person that for refuah he needs to eat, then will be, of course, mutar. Now, the Mishnah Berura writes on this first part of Shulchan Aruch, that's asur lo להתעסק בצרכיו, the person should not engage in their needs. Now, before or boker, before the day starts, a person could do melacha because it's not time for tefillah yet. So therefore, it would be mutar. Now, if you started before alot hashachar, we mentioned the sugi in brachot is muchach, that the day starts from alot hashachar. So even though that we don't want to daven from alot hashachar, that's only b'di'evet, But when it comes to this halakha of not working, not doing your things, that the isur starts from alot hashachar. How about if I started something from before alot hashachar? Do I have to drop it and stop it immediately when alot hashachar comes? Now, alot hashachar by itself is debatable exactly how to calculate the exact hour of alot hashachar. But however you slice that, the Kaf HaChaim writes you don't have to stop your work once you started it beheter. So if you started beheter, you're good to go. We see the example of this for the Mishna and the Gemara that talk about things you cannot do before Tfilat Mincha. There's certain things, it's one of the Misuda, you can't, half an hour before the Siman of any mitzvah, you cannot start things that will draw a person in and you may forget to do the mitzvah. For instance, Suda, or sitting in front of a tzapar, in front of a haircut of a barber, and this applies to B'dikat Chametz, this applies to Tfilat Mincha, many other mitzvot that are there, and for those who, let's say, accept Shabbat early, right? If you want to, you didn't say Shema properly, and now you get home, if it's within half an hour of Setak L'Chavim, so it's within half an hour of Zman Kriyat Shema. You can't start Seudat Shabbat within half an hour of the Zman of Kriyat Shema, which is the Mitzvah D'Oraita. Because when you daven early minyan on Shabbat, so summer, this becomes a very big deal. Because many people, because of their kids, they want to daven an early tefillah. So hence they're saying Shema when it's before Shkiyah even. And by the time they finish, Kabbalat Shabbat, meaning talking to people and so on, and walking home and setting up the table and for everyone to sit and get ready for Kiddush already is within half an hour of Setak L'Chavim. So then, it's a dilemma because you can't say Shema because it's not time for it yet. It's not Setak L'Chavim. But you also can't say Kiddush because it's within half an hour of Setak L'Chavim, so you can't start a Su'udah. So what do you do then? So of course it will be easy to avoid it. Either make sure you get home before half an hour and right away start your Su'udah, or if you already got at least the Zman of Yonim, it would be good to go. Otherwise, you would have to make a reminder that halachically is viable, right? Halachically would be viable. Now you have the Mitzvah Sfirat HaOmer, also would be part of that. But this is a general rule that before the time of the mitzvah comes, especially when the time of the mitzvah came already, you can't just do your own things before you do the mitzvah. And Rabbi Chaim says if you started it before, and same would be the Su'udah. If you come home and it's right before half an hour, you start your Su'udah, then you're good to go. You could continue the Su'udah until half an hour passes, whatever Setak L'Chavim comes, and then you can say Shema in the middle of Su'udah, and you're good to go. It's not asur to continue to do the Su'udah once you started beheter.
What if the time started but it hasn't finished? So like Mincha, you could start at 1:30, but the latest time you can say Mincha 7:30. So you're at work all day, you're doing work before 1:30 at the head time period. Now you get home at 5. Can you have dinner with your family or do the Mincha first?
So we're going to discuss that. Again, I brought this sugya in, even though that's its own complete sugya, which we're going to deal with, but this is has something to share with that, our thing, because the Mishna over here says that you can't do your own job, but it doesn't say if you started what happens. So Kaf HaChaim, we brought this in because of the Kaf HaChaim. Kaf HaChaim mentions that if you started beheter, then you're good to go. If you start before Alot HaShachar doing something, then you can finish that job and do your thing. For instance, shaving in the morning is a whole question, right? So there are those people who are, they have to shave every morning, right? And can you shave before Shacharit? You wake up, it's morning already, you haven't davened, you want to shave, right? Not everyone is capable of shaving the car while driving, right? So can you shave before Shacharit? It's not a question at all, right? But if you started before Alot HaShachar, you don't have to leave a half a face and go to shul until after Shacharit. You could finish the job until before you go. Even if you're machmir for not shaving before Shacharit, we're going to discuss that. Shaving, taking a shower, all of those things are questions. Can you do before Shacharit? Can you take a shower with soap, nice hot shower in the morning, or is that considered you taking care of your own private, personal, selfish needs before you daven? It's something that we will discuss right over here. So it says the Mishnah Berura, the Katav Eliyah Rabbi brings from Eliyah Rabbi, then lasot shum inyan ad shevarech seder brachot. Even beforehand, you should not do anything until you do your brachot at least, even if you're before the morning, before Alot HaShachar. And it's Pashut, says the Mishnah Berura, that he's talking about within half an hour before Alot HaShachar. Within half an hour before Alot HaShachar is within half an hour before the Zman Tefillah, so that you need to say at least brachot. But if you are further back, you're 45 minutes before Alot HaShachar, then you don't need to say brachot or anything. You can just do whatever you want to do. You want to do your emails, you want to do your job, work, whatever else it may be that you want to do at night, early morning hours, quote unquote. You could do that, there's no problem, because it's before half an hour before Zman Tefillah, and therefore you will be good to go. Srachav, Mishi yesh lo avadim ivriim, or meshartim shtarech sheyashav. Imagine if you have a Jewish servant, a Jewish maidservant. Now they come, they're working for you, they need to do certain things in the morning, right? And the Mishnah Berura writes, Yasirah mi be'erev, shemkuvam mitatam yirchatzu yedehem be'barachot. Barachot v'ikru parasha rishona shel Shema. At least they should do the Tzilat Yadayim, say the brachot, say the first parasha of Shema, and then they could help with the household chores and so on, even though that they have not davened yet. The early chores of the house, they could do only after saying brachot and so on. Now, how about if you are doing things that are needed for tzibur, right? It's not your chores that you're doing things for other people. So that will be mutar. And Chacham Ben Surah Shaul, Rabbi Shalom, he writes, they write in Olat Zion that that's the reason that you could take care of your kids before Shacharit. Right? You could take care of your kids, you could wash them, clean them, change them, all those things that they need, feed them. Even though that's before Shacharit, that's not considered your private needs, it's considered Sorchet Tzibur. You're doing it for other people, that would be completely mutar. There's no problem with that. And Berura in Ot Chaf, well, before that, one more piece over here. The Orasion writes that if you want to go lelech l'derech, because the Mishnah Berura writes that you in Ot Yutet, that even before Mincha and Arvit, if the time of Mincha Arvit has come, you cannot start traveling before davening Mincha Arvit. Going to derech is something that also will be prohibited before the tefillah, if the time of tefillah has arrived. So if you want to go to a trip, seemingly you would have to daven first and then go to a trip. And what is considered a trip, latzet laderech, lelech laderech, the Orazion writes that it's only if it's going to take a mahalach of 72 dakot. It will be 72 minutes. That's considered latzet laderech. If you're driving to shul, even if it's going to be a long drive, it's not going to be 72 minutes. That's fine. But if you're going on a trip, it's going to be something that's 72 minutes path. So that is something that you have to be already mindful to daven beforehand, and it will be considered latzet laderech. Now, Mishnah Berura brought that even for Mincha Arvit it becomes a problem, and the Kaf HaChaim also agrees with the Mishnah Berura, but over here, Chacham Ben Zion Rabbi Shaul paskins that before Mincha and Arvit is mutar. That's your daily activity. You're going on a path. You're driving to to wherever it is that you're driving, even if it's more than 72 minutes, but you have to drive for business trips, for selling things, for whatever it is. You don't have to say, well, it's time of mincha already, so I can't travel anymore until I daven. You could do whatever it is that you do, and then daven afterwards, and that will be fine. So the next piece of the Mishnah Berura is even if you can catch a minyan where you're going afterwards, still it will be prohibited because going on a path, going on a travel is considered like asiyat zerachav. So therefore, you cannot do that before you daven, even if you have a given minyan where you're going and you're not going to be missing tefillah b'tzibur. Now,
Can you repeat that again?
if you are traveling and the travel that you have is to the destination that you already have a minyan there. You know, you check it on Go Daven, you have a minyan there. You say, well, I'm not missing minyan. It's not a matter of missing minyan. If you are traveling on a path that's minimum 72 minutes, that is considered dealing with your own needs before tefillah. You would have to daven first if the time of tefillah has arrived, and then only then you could go. Now, the Berura halacha over here, if you take a look, in Dibura Matchil Va'afilu, he writes that if a person is waking up early to go greet his friend, lirot sham eze esek va'akav zeh noten lo gam ken shalom, that would be mutar, right? If you're going to deal with something that's mutar, and then once you get there, you greet him, you say shalom to him, also is mutar. But the Bach and the Vilna Gaon seem to say that that's asur. But Kaf HaChaim over here adds that the heter that Pri Megadim gives is only for the Shulchan Aruch that we had before. When you bump into someone, you could say shalom to them. But according to the second opinion that we studied yesterday, that you still should say safratava, you still should not be saying shalom. So even though that you have a heter over here of greeting somebody when you're doing business with them before mashkim lepetach havero, still will be questionable over here in this pattern that we mentioned yesterday in the Seif Bet, that a person still cannot say shalom, should not say shalom lechatchila, even though the mikar adin is mutar, should just say safratava. Now, one last piece of the Mishnah Berura, v'lo le'echol, this you cannot eat or drink. The Gemara says, strong language in this in Masechet Brachot. It is in Daf Yud Amud Bet. The Gemara says if a person eats or drinks before the morning, Alav Amar HaKatuv, the pasuk in Melachim says about him, ve'oti shlachta acharei gavecha. That Hashem says, complaining, says you threw me behind your back, that you turned your back to me, and you are osek b'srachecha, you are busy with taking care of your own selfish needs. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'achar she'achal v'shata v'nitga'a kibel alav malchut shamayim. After this person did his needs and drank and ate and took care of his arrogance, then he is turning to me. And the reason that this is considered ga'ava, the Ben Ish Chai writes on that Gemara, on Masechet Brachot, Daf Yud, in Ben Yehoyada, he says that the person has to daven on his parnasah before he eats, because we want to show that everything that you have, all my assets, my parnasah, everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I'm not ingrate. I'm not a person that's kafui tova. So it says, therefore, Ben Ish Chai, if you don't daven and you just go eat before you daven, that's considered that you don't recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given you. You don't prioritize HaKadosh Baruch Hu over your own needs. That's something negative. Now, in the parenthesis, this is interesting. The Shlach Kadosh writes, there is a Zohar that talks about the importance of davening for a person's parnasah before before their meal every time. And the Shlach Kadosh says, and this is going to be very interesting for people to hear, Shlach Kadosh in Shenoch Daberid, in Marachet Kuf, I believe it is, he writes that there are two different minhagim of what to say before Seudah in order to be Yotzei, in order to fulfill this Zohar. So some people say the Psukim of Mizmor David. Mizmor David Hashem Ro'i Lo Echtzar, Mirot Asher Bisei, the whole Mizmor. And other people say the Psukim of Enei Kol Elecha Yesaberu V'ata Noten Lahem Et Ochlam Beito V'Potech Et Yadecha V'Maspia Lecha Yiratzon. So now you understand the two minhagim that you see amongst the Persian Jews. Many of them say, before Kiddush by Shabbat they say Mizmor David, and they before Hamotzi they say Enei Kol Elecha Yesaberu, to have fulfilled both of these minhagim that Shlach Kadosh brings. Right? You think we're just we're saying it, right? Especially because the Ashkenazim don't say Mizmor David. I don't know such a thing. So where does it come from? It comes from fulfilling this Shlach Kadosh, basically Zohar Kadosh, based on the minhag that Shlach Kadosh brings, even though the Shla was one of the Gedolei Ashkenazim, was not a Sfaradi, but these are the minhagim that have been brought, and the Enei Kol Elecha that most of people say before Hamotzi. Again, I think the Yotzei Shiraz, they say Mizmor David before Hamotzi. Right? Says that?
Say Mizmor before Kiddush and then say it again before Hamotzi.
And then they say Enei Kol Elecha as well?
Yeah.
They say,
and Hodu.
yeah. But they say, so those, both of these minhagim of Shla, almost all the Persian Jews do. It's just a matter of when they do it. I think the Teheranis, they do the Mizmor David by Kiddush, and they say Enei Kol Elecha by Hamotzi. And as you mentioned, others say both of them by Hamotzi beforehand. But this is the concept of davening and recognizing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's sovereigns over the world and over our private life, and especially our parnasah and mezonot, before every tefillah. It's a beautiful thing. A person going through life more mindfully and realizing that this is what I'm doing. I'm thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for my mezonot is something powerful. But that's what the Ben Yehoyada says on Masechet Brachot, why it's considered gava.
What about I don't know if it's a halacha or it's a tradition, they said when you do the netilah, there should be as much of a kitzur or shortening of time that you do hamotzi. So this,
yeah, but this is again, there's no isur to talk. We don't want to talk dvarim betelim because there will be hesach hadat, but there's no problem saying a few psukim before hamotzi.
So anything that's for kedusha, as long as
this is sorach hatzeudah. It's a sorach hatzeudah. It's a need for sudah because according to Zohar, you're mechuyav to daven on your thing before before the thing. Yeah.
There's some who wash, but they don't say the bracha, and they come to the table and then they say the bracha and then
Bracha what? Is that the time?
hamotzi.
Well, that's they dried their hands already.
Yes.
That's a mistake.
That's the custom.
That's not the custom.
Traditionally.
No, they shouldn't do that, especially for Sfaradim. Look, according to Maran, I don't want to get into this. This is something we're going to be discussing in Siman Kuf Nun Chet. We haven't gotten there yet, so I don't want to jump the gun. And this is a massive, one of the most difficult and complex sugyot in Orach Chaim is the sugya of Tefillah. You're not going to get into that right now, but in a nutshell, Maran Shcharuch holds that you have to say the bracha of the Tefillah before you start Netilah. Because the Gemara says, all the mitzvot you do before you say the bracha and then before you do them, right? Aside from Tevilat Ger. So, according to Maran, you stand there with a cup of Netilah, you say your bracha al Tefillah, then you start washing your hands. The reason the minhag is not like that is because our hands are not clean, are dirty, and you can't say bracha with dirty hands, and all that. So what we do is, because it's asur to eat bread with wet hands, so we say, well, mitzvah v'tadam is not completed until you dry your hands. So the way we get out of it is, you wash your hands, and as they're still wet, you say the bracha, and then you dry them as completion of the mitzvah, right? Same thing is with Brit Milah, right? Brit Milah, it's machloket rishonim when to say the bracha of ala milah, and technically speaking, you would say it beforehand, but Maran says that you do it after the cut before Priya, which there are reasons based on Rosh and Ramban for why we do that, because the moil may back up last minute, and it's happened these things. So then the bracha will be bracha batala and so on. So therefore, we say it right in the middle. But nowadays, it will be a very good question to ask, because nowadays 90+% of the moalim, they do milan priya bebat achat. So once you cut, there's nothing there left. So that would be a question for mitzvot mevarech alehen over l'asiyatan, which has to be discussed. Now, sometimes you have a mitzvah memushechet, a mitzvah that's elongated, and every moment of it is a mitzvah. So that's a little bit different. For instance, the tzitzit we had in Siman Chet earlier on, that if you're wearing tzitzit early on, before Zman of Mishyakir, then you come to shul, you wear it without bracha. You come to shul, you don't have to wear it again. You just touch the tzitziot and you say the bracha, because the maaseh mitzvah that you did, every second is a mitzvah. But once you have a mitzvah of netilat yadayim, if you do the mitzvah, you've already done it. So therefore, drying the hands before saying the bracha would not be an appropriate minhag. B'ezrat Hashem, we will continue this in the days to come.
I'm